Delegate Frederickson, Delegate Tai, you'll be recognized as alternates participating in the meeting, just because we're two standing committee delegates short. And with that, Delegate Clerk Fletcher, if you could take us through the opening ceremony.
Sure thing. Give me one moment to pull up our agenda, and then we'll take it from there. All right. So pursuant to the acts of 2025, this virtual meeting of the Barnstable County Assembly of Delegates Standing Committee on Public Services will be conducted via remote means only in accordance with applicable law. Members of the public may watch the meeting through live real-time broadcast at www.youtube.com/user/Barnstable County. A public participation guide and meeting documents are available in advance at www.capecod.gov. The County of Barnstable does not discriminate in the administration of its programs or activities on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or other category protected by state and federal anti-discrimination laws and regulations. Reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities are available upon request. For more information or to file a complaint, please contact Christina Marchak, Barnstable County ADA Non-Discrimination Coordinator at jmarczak@capecod.gov. Call 508-375-6646 or visit www.capecod.gov. Members of the public may also attend the meeting remotely through Microsoft Teams, and that all of that information is available at the meeting center on capecod.gov. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And now a moment of silence to honor our troops who've guided service to our country and all those who are serving currently in the armed forces. Now for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
One day.
And Clerk Fletcher, if you wouldn't mind calling the roll, and then we'll get the meeting kicked off.
All right, bear with me one moment. All right. Delegate Fuller is absent, but we've got Delegate Tai filling in as an alternate. Vice Chair Harder.
Here.
All right. I think I skipped you. Chair Gessen.
Here.
Delegate King, I believe, is also not here, but we have Delegate Frederickson. Can you unmute Delegate Frederickson? Are you here with us?
Yeah.
All right. And then Delegate Sampson?
Here.
That's 5, Mr. Chair.
Okay, perfect. And looks like the first and only item on the agenda today is a worded
Update.
Dredge Department update. So with that, I'll hand it over to Administrator Dutton to brief what you would like to brief, and then I know some of our delegates have questions.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And I know I'm not I'm not Ken, so that's clear. But I did, Ken's out in the field and trying to wrap up a fairly large dredge project in Mashpee. So I said I would step in and try to provide some information and give you an idea of what's sort of swirling around in the dredge world. I think maybe I should start with what potentially could be the most important issue facing us this year. There seems to be some indication, we've received some indication from some of our state contacts that the dredge grants, which the state has been fairly consistent with, will be going away in the next budget, in the governor's proposed budget. So with that, we have asked towns, select boards, town harbor masters, town administrators and managers to reach out to their reps, reach out to the governor's office, and make sure that they voice their opinions and hope that the dredge grant will continue on. And again, some of this is hearsay. We haven't been able to get a really straight answer about what the future of the dredge grants will be. There's some indication that there's going to be a different process for a lot of the environmental grants, which is great. Some of the infrastructure grants that had been a hodgepodge of different applications were combined several years ago into what is referred to as MassWorks. So when you hear about a MassWorks grant, generally that's infrastructure grant, and it sort of combined and consolidated a whole bunch of different grant processes and grant opportunities. So we are hopeful that that the dredge grant, or the money that funded many of the dredge projects, is not going away, that it's simply getting redirected and will be distributed through a different mechanism. That's our hope. If that's not the case, and we're simply losing dredge monies, that could be quite a concern, certainly for the Cape. In years past, we have acknowledged to our number of our legislators that the dredge grants have not been used to their maximum capacity, I guess I'll say, and there have been a limited number of applicants, and quite honestly, that can be attributed to the fact that we don't have we are in an era where we've got a bunch of harbor masters who are new on the job, haven't necessarily done any grant writing in their prior work experience, and not even aware that grants are in existence to offset the cost of some of the dredge projects. And so if that's the case, and if that's a reason that the state is doing away with a program that has funded the dredge in the past, then we want to make sure that the state understands that the county's willing to step in and educate and sort of guide and be a sort of a sounding board for these grant programs, and the town's interaction with the grant program. So that is that's kind of a concern for us. We don't want that funding to be lost. And as I said, a number of towns have used that in the past, not just on the Cape, but on the North Shore, South Shore, and even I think there's some inland lakes that have benefited from that grant program. So we'll see. I'll obviously keep everybody posted on that. But the legislature, actually the governor's office, should be getting a lot of mail on that one. As I say, Ken's done a really good job of reaching out to all the harbor masters and making sure that they voice their concerns. So that's the mass dredge grant issue. So I see Delegate Gessen has.
Before you move on to the next topic, I've got a question on that. And then also if any other delegates have questions on that. I'm wondering just what's the order of magnitude in terms of money we're talking with these grants? I know not the entire dredge budget has obviously gone through these grants, but do we know how big of a line item they're cutting out there?
I'd have to get the exact figures, but in terms of state grants, it's a pretty small amount. Our benefit or the Cape Town's benefit, could amount to hundreds of thousands of dollars on an annual basis. So it's not, you're right, it's not our entire revenue stream, but it's could represent, in any given year, 10 to 20 to 30 to 40%, depending on the year. So.
And do we know where, and you might not know this, but I'd be curious to know, is this something that has always been in the governor's budget, or in the last couple of years with Governor Healy, has this not been included in the governor's budget and then been back during the legislative process, or is this kind of the first time that we've seen it missing?
I believe it's always been in the governor's budget. And this dates back to 95, 96 timeframe. So it's and then back then, sort of the grand bargain was state was going to develop a grant program for dredging, and they were going to push dredging back to the local communities and give up its own dredge program. So we, for that reason, we really don't want to see it disappear. We want to make sure that there's some consistency there.
Thank you. Any other delegates have questions on this? Cool. And we can, I'll reserve the end of the meeting once Administrator Dutton wraps up for actions that the committee wants to take or recommendations that we want to take moving forward, so we can save that for later. But yeah, Administrator Dutton, continue mission.
Next on the list, I did just more nuts and bolts. The dredge department is finishing up its work in Mashpee, Pompanesett. This, as you recall, was a very large project that's been in the works for several years. We are looking at this project alone. We're looking at invoicing in the $1.5 million range. So this was an important project for us to get done. We put two dredges on it for a good chunk of the time since September. I think it was September 7th or September 15th. So that's where they've been since mid-September. So they will, and Ken wanted me to point out that they did lose almost 50% of their dredge days to weather. So this has not been a good weather, a good fall for dredging, and a lot of that's wind. They have a hard time with winds coming in from the whatever direction that it comes at them. So. But that's a good chunk of their revenue. So they'll head now. I believe they've got a job in Truro, and I believe they've got a job. Two dredges are going in different places. Now I can't remember Truro, and I'm not sure if it was Harwich or might have been Yarmouth. But anyway, they're not. There's no lack of work for them. Let's put it that way. So that's just nuts and bolts of where they are today. I will say on the other major issue that you're probably waiting patiently for, the dredge permit optimization study is something that was commissioned just to figure out if there's a way that the county can play a role in making the permitting process smoother, making the permit process move a little faster than it has. And that report did come back. It was distributed to the Dredge Advisory Committee. The Dredge Advisory Committee set up a smaller subcommittee to really dig into that report and make recommendations back to the full committee and to the county. So that is the report right now is sitting with the subcommittee. And I can give you just sort of a thumbnail sketch of what the study says. It acknowledges that there's a long delay in the permitting process. It attributes some of those delays to the towns, because of what I mentioned earlier, sort of lack of understanding of how the process works and not really understanding that you have to follow up, with wherever the permit sits constantly and loudly. But it also attributes some of that breakdown to the agencies that are reviewing. So lack of information about where the permit stands is also something pointed out by the study. It could be with one agency for a year, but the applicant, the town, has no idea that it's sitting on somebody's desk at such and such agency. So more clarity about where the permit sits was an important one. The Army Corps seems to be where most of the permits really get delayed. And Army Corps is acknowledges that to their credit. So during the past Dredge Summit, we had a really good interaction with Army Corps, and they committed to having better communication. Still, some of the permits are sitting with Army Corps. They did provide a little bit of guidance on how to best apply. And I'll use, I think it's Chatham. I'll use it as an example. So on maintenance, so Chatham's waiting on a 10-year permit. So on maintenance dredge projects, it's easier for the Army Corps and for all the agencies to issue a 10-year permit, because it's all dredge projects that have happened before, and are just done as a routine matter. So once you start to include sort of new projects into your 10-year permit, it drags down the process, because there's a much longer, more laborious process for the new projects than there is for the maintenance projects. So anyway, we've had a fair amount of interaction with Army Corps and the other agencies, and that's a good thing. But the study itself is recommending, I think there are about 5 or 6 different routes to go. Option A is do nothing and just proceed as we go. And then the other extreme is the county taking over all of the permitting processes for all of the towns. I can tell you just from experience that that's not going to fly. I don't think the towns are willing to give up, their permitting processes or their permitting options. So I think somewhere in the middle is where we'll probably land, where the advisory committee will probably land. And my thought right now is that it'll involve the county taking a role as sort of the coordinator, if you will. So that the towns apply, they do their applications, they get maybe pre-application process with the county, for the county to provide some advice on how best to optimize your application in order to get fairly speedy results. And then post application period, the county can be sort of that person that's constantly checking up on the permits and ensuring that they're moving, being sort of the squeaky wheel, essentially. So that's basically where it stands right now. We've got, obviously 14 of the 15 towns have utilized or do utilize our dredge program. So you've got, 14 different players in the sort of the permitting game. You've got arguably 14, or probably fewer, but 14 engineering firms with varying degrees of experience and success in applying for the various permits. So having one sort of resource within the county to provide support, and mostly just to provide that squeaky wheel, I think will make a big difference in terms of success rates and sort of tightening up the timeline within which we get our permits issued and we can get our dredge out and working. So that's kind of where the permit optimization study stands. But maybe I'll stop there and just see if anybody's got questions on that piece. Nope. There's
I have
mine.
a question, but if any other delegates have questions before me. My question is, and it might be too early to say, but I think it's a great idea to have the county play a coordinating role to get these permits through. It's a choke point that we've been hearing about for a long time, and I think it's awesome to make sure the 15 towns with their varying degrees of expertise are able to have help from the county. Any thoughts on how it's going to get paid for? Is this an intermunicipal agreement getting considered, or is this going to be part of the dredge budget? What do you get that?
Nope, that's a good question. I think the Dredge Advisory Committee will have an opinion about that. I don't know what that is. I certainly would have an opinion about that as well. I would say, that given the fact that the dredge department is run as an enterprise, I would think that I guess I could argue either way now that I think about it, but I would suggest, building as much into the rate as possible. Keep in mind that the rate, even though we just increased the rates a couple of years ago, the rate that the towns pay in some cases can be a third of what the market is demanding. So we are a really good deal for the towns, and I think we'll be more vocal about that, and we'll build a little more. We'll dig into the rates a little more than we have in the past. I did get a question at I think it was the last commissioners meeting about whether we were looking at a consistent way to increase rates instead of waiting for 15 years and then jacking them up substantially. And the short answer is yes. We're looking at different rate options, which range from just tracking inflation to breaking down the rates into basically sort of flexible rates, so that we are recouping our costs for each project instead of trying to recoup the cost across the entire fiscal year and across all of the projects. So we have a booster rate, which is a couple dollars, I think, different than our regular rate, and that booster rate is great. But the booster, you might have 1 mile, you might have half a mile of pipe, you might have 2 miles of pipe, and that's fairly significant difference when it comes to mobilization. So really analyzing what's involved in mobilization at each particular site, and then somehow passing that cost along through the rate for that particular project is something that we're looking at. So we are looking at a bunch of different options in terms of rates and how to pay for that sort of person that would be really focused on pushing the permit applications.
Thank you. Delegate Harder.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I've been tearing through my notes, but I believe it was just fiscal year 25 when we raised the rates, and we promised the towns that they would not be raised for 5 years, because there were two options given. There was one where we had a steady increase over 5, or there was one where we just went straight to the cost of 5 years and wouldn't raise it again, wouldn't even discuss it until then, with the hopes that those 5 years would make enough money that the rates could either stay the same or even decrease. So I really don't think discussing rates is what we should be doing right now, because unless we really want to get the towns angry with us, I don't think we should mess with the rates for another 3 years or so. And I'm going to take this opportunity to say that I'm not, because of permitting, weather, time of year restrictions, because all of a sudden there's some new bird. I don't think that we should all insist, at least for now, at least in the near future, that the dredge be self-sufficient. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
No, and I
you, Dale.
appreciate that comment. And if I don't, predates me, so I don't know what commitments were made, but if the county had made a commitment on specifically on rates, then obviously we would abide by whatever that commitment was, and we just have to work around it or work through it. So I would say that, yeah.
Yeah, just to echo what Delegate Harder said, in terms of looking back at how the conversation went down and the consistency of what we would do, as far as I remember, there was a thorough study done by a consultant before you administered Dutton. It broke down in front of us as a final recommendation, 3 different options as to the rate process. And one of them, as Delegate Harder said, was gradual increase over time, over the course of 5 years, where in the beginning it would be a very small increase, and in the end, by year 5, it would be a significant increase that would essentially balance out for the fact that it was delayed. And then another option, I think the option we went with was just an across the board increase that was somewhere in between, because we're going to do it for the entire period. So we were just going to increase it there, projected out 5 years, under the assumption that, I'll speak for myself, and most likely that was going to be the permanent rate. Of course, there was some hope that, things could balance out. Maybe there'd be a reason to decrease the rate, but knowing how rates work and how government works, I found it unlikely that by year 6, all of a sudden there'd be a discount offered at the county. But that's to say, I don't think there was any necessarily concrete guarantee made that, rates are not going to decrease or increase beyond this point, but very much so in laying those out as 3 different options. It would be pretty inconsistent to go back to towns and go we gave you an option that this is going to be the rate for the next 5 years, as opposed to this rate for the next 5 years. But actually we want both. We want to increase it by a good amount in year 3, and then increase it again before, year 5. So I would just echo what Delegate Harder said, and given the conversation that was had around rates a couple of years ago, it would be pretty inconsistent with our communities to go back and tell them that, we're changing course before, fiscal year 28, 29. But worth doing, and Administrator Dutton, I'm sure you're going to have a lot of conversations with town administrators about it, if that ever comes up. But just so you know how that kind of went down a year or 2 ago.
No, that's good. I appreciate that background. That's helpful. And as I say, we won't, we're not going to do anything that runs contrary to what we committed to do prior to my arrival, but we'll obviously plan for the future. So.
And then Delegate Harder, looks like you have a follow-up. And then
Thank
Delegate
you.
Ty, I got you after.
One of the first of all, I believe that we went straight to the highest number, but just for Administrator Dutton, the fee structure was done by the same consultants that we're using now, Anchor and I want to say Q&A, but I know that's not it. But those 2 consultants that have been doing this study were the ones that did the rate study too.
Right, correct. Anchor QEA is and they do a lot of dredge study work and engineering work around the whole country, if not the world. So yeah, same company.
Good evening, and thank you. I was trying to go back while listening, that I thought at one time, and we were going on these rates because Ken had asked in regard to administrative help, and I don't seem to remember what happened to that. And I thought that was in regard to if the rates were steady for X amount of years, there's a possibility. Does Harwich remember that? That he, and so I don't know where that is. And I'm asking, where is that in regard to his help?
If I may.
Delegate Harder, if you have. Yep.
Yes, we have been, just for people who don't know, the history, Delegate Ty, the former delegate from Chatham, and I were the three Dredge supporters, and we go to every meeting and all that, and went through all of this. And we did continually for about 4 years, I think, ask for Ken to get an administrative assistant. The first year it was shot down, saying, no, we have to figure out the money. The second year we said, look, we're getting there. How about we get him part-time help? No. I think the third year we tried again. No, it was voted down. And finally, when we raised the rates, we thought, excellent, now we can get him help. And then people said, well, no, let's see what this study does. So Ken has been needing help for years, and every year I scream that we need to get him help. And now the problem is that if we end up hiring a coordinator for permitting, which I agree we desperately need, I am afraid he also won't get an administrative assistant. But I do believe there's a way perhaps we could get him, part-time. That's where it stands in my memory.
And I think if, just to respond to that, I do believe Ken has some money in his existing budget for some help. I'm not sure if that's considered part-time or full-time. I see Carol might have more details on that one.
In the current fiscal year, the budget included a part-time staff member. So he has had a part-time staff member since the beginning of the fiscal year.
So that's a little bit of help, and I hear you. I hear Ken. I hear him very clearly and quite often talk about that kind of help. And I think once we get through this process, assuming that we'll come out with a recommendation to engage somebody to sort of really track the various permits going through the system. That there'll be a little bit of a restructure within the dredge department and hopefully accommodate both the administrative side and the sort of the more technical side. And I think we'll get there. That's one of my goals, quite honestly, is to get the dredge to be fully sustaining operation. And I go back to when the dredge first the department was first created. With the state, gifting us several $100,000 to purchase our first dredge. And I think at the time we got this dredge, and as government often does, they say, oh, this is great, hire, a couple people and we'll go out and start dredging stuff. And that's what they did. It gradually grew. The problem was, we have as you know, the dredge has no home. We're literally in a field in the back of the Dennis DPW, and they have literally no place to do their maintenance, no place to do their repairs on their equipment, and so that became kind of the normal. And in the business world, I don't think you would ever consider the way that our dredge operates as right or correct or normal. But we've just been with it for so long. We've had 30 years of it, that's kind of what we consider normal. So one of my hopes is to come to the assembly with a real comprehensive plan to kind of overhaul the operation and not to adversely affect any town's dredge projects. Certainly, we want to make the dredge more efficient and more nimble to be able to handle more work, quite honestly. So between some of the new initiatives going on, some of the new dredge technology going on, some of the federal infrastructure grants that we can avail ourselves of. So I think there are a number of different opportunities here to really make this a shining example. It already is a shining example of what the county can do for the towns, but I think we can sort of step it up and make it run like a normal quote unquote normal business. So that's why, the rates are part of that. How we adjust the rates and when we adjust the rates is all part of that. The kind of equipment that we purchases that we make, the wise choices we make on creating and funding positions and what those positions do are all part of sort of a bigger strategy, a bigger business strategy for the department. So that's once we get through this piece of it, through the Anchor QEA permit optimization piece, I think you'll shortly after that you'll see a much bigger business plan coming before you. So
Awesome. I know we're looking forward to seeing that. Any other questions for Administrator Dutton? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Dutton, for taking the time today. And I think I'll give an opportunity for the delegates here to talk amongst themselves a little bit, unless Delegate Harder, you got something.
I just wanted to let Administrator Dutton know that I did write a letter for the committee to read and hopefully send to the assembly for approval, that we will then send to the governor and the legislators, et cetera, et cetera.
excellent. I appreciate that. And just so it's clear, because one of the town managers asked me this, we are focusing the correspondence on the governor right now, because the governor's budget, she's developing her budget as we speak, I'm sure. And so we wanted to get a word in directly to her prior to formulating the budget. And if it in fact ends up that the dredge grant program is gone and not replicated somewhere else in the budget, then we'll focus on our legislators. So certainly nothing wrong with copying legislators on a letter to the governor. Certainly that would be welcome. But that's just kind of our line of attack at this point.
In that case, before you go, Administrator Dutton, one thing I'm going to mention to the group here is I saw the letter Delegate Harder is going to recommend that we're going to talk about. I thought it was great. There's one thing I would like to add to it, and you might be able to help with that. I'm hoping we might be able to get a line number for the budget where our concern is, and as well as an amount, and possibly whatever department overseeing that line item. You don't have to get it now to us. I know we're not going to vote on this at the assembly until the earliest week and a half, or the earliest week and a half from now. But if we're going to do a letter, I think that would be useful to have.
That's actually a very useful thing for you to have. So I'll dig that up and get it over to you.
Okay, thank you. All right. With that, Delegate Harder, you want to talk a little bit about your letter before we get going?
Certainly. So I apologize, everyone, that I didn't get it to you until about half an hour ago. So you probably haven't seen it. And I asked Clerk Fletcher if he would be able to share his screen so that it's not long at all, so that we could sort of scan it together and decide and discuss your thoughts. Clerk Fletcher, is that doable? Is that legal? Is that
I
kosher?
can put it up real quick,
Okay,
if that's okay with you.
sure.
Yeah, real quick. Can we see it?
There.
Also, just so you know, Delegate Harder, Clerk Fletcher asked us to wrap this up in about 10 minutes so we can go on to the next meeting.
Absolutely. I would just like people to,
Dan, I might be able to get a better copy up if you pull that down, but I was trying to figure this out from my screen, because that looks like it's coming through directly from your email. Give me one more second and I should be able to get this up.
okay, because if we can just agree to send this to the, we don't have to finalize it today, but if the committee could just agree to send this with changes, like, Delegate Gessen asked for, to send it to the, assembly on the 16th, whatever.
Can everybody
So
see
here's the
this on the screen or no?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
We good? Okay. So I don't know if people, I don't know how fast people read. It should be in all of your emails as well.
Yeah, I was just very late.
Um,
I
yeah,
mean, that's basically it.
I think that,
It's just it's just 5 little paragraphs. But
Okay,
that's
I
Delegate
think this is-
Gessen said, add
There you go.
the information he asked for. He asked Administrator Dutton to get. And then what do people think? Are you okay with presenting this to the full assembly at the next assembly meeting?
I'll say, I'll say I'm definitely on board. I do think it's important that we add that info. As I said, because the governor's office, I mean, Governor Healy probably will not be reading this letter herself. So we want to make sure it goes to the right administration or right department. And if they receive it, I'm sure they're going to get numerous different letters. So they're going to group it by line item. So it's important that we give them a line item and a number there. And then I would also say we should probably, in addition to the delegation, include the rest of the delegation as well on this, and our towns on the CC. But aside from that, I think the content of the letter is great, and I'm on board with recommending it to the full assembly.
All righty. So if anybody has any other thoughts on it or don't like it, or any other questions about today, let us know.
I'm fine with it.
I'm real good with it. Thank you. Thank you.
Delegate Harder, would you like to make a motion?
I move that we send this, that we recommend this letter to the full assembly with changes discussed by Deputy Speaker Gessen, and recommend to the full assembly on the December 16th.
17th.
15th.
17th.
17th. Okay, 17th. That's my motion.
Second.
Clerk Fletcher, if you could boil down that motion for yourself in the minutes, and then I'll roll.
All right. It gets harder with alternates. Hold on a second. I believe we've got Delegate Ty for Delegate Fuller.
Yes.
Chair Gessen.
Yes.
Vice Chair Harder.
Yes.
Delegate Frederickson for Delegate King.
Yes.
And Delegate Sampson.
Yes.
I believe that's everybody, Mr. Chair. That's unanimous.
Amazing news. In that case, unless anyone has anything else, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Clerk, could you call the roll?
All right. That is Delegate Ty for Delegate Fuller.
Yes.
Chair Gessen.
Yes.
Vice Chair Harder.
Yes.
Delegate Frederickson for Delegate King.
Yes.
And Delegate Sampson.
Yes.
That is everybody, Mr. Chair.
Have a
Thank
good
you,
night.
everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Ian,
See
thank
you
you, Ella.
soon.